All right, boys, we are live.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'll go ahead. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Josh Kopel, host of the Full Comp Podcast. Mr. Will, introduce yourself.
What's up, everybody? I'm Will Slickers, the host of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, and Good Morning Hospitality.
Here we go, Adam.
Right. Hey, Adam Knight, host of the Proven Principles Podcast.
Shaun.
I am Shaun de Vries, all the way from Australia. I am host of the Open Pantry podcast. Awesome to be here.
Michael.
And I'm Michael, the host of the Hospitality Maverick podcast here in the UK.
Well, here in Los Angeles, the sky is falling. They just shut down dine-in operations and outdoor operations beginning on Wednesday.
How you feel about
Again.
Back to ground zero.
Oh, yeah. Delivery and takeout is going to be, I guess, the end-all, be-all for at least the next 3 weeks, probably longer. What I'm struggling with is that it's not a sustainable model. The commission fees and service fees, they don't really work. They didn't work when it comprised 10% of our business. Now that it comprises 60, 70, 80, 90, now 100% of our business, I just don't know. I don't know how to manage it. Thoughts, comments, concerns?
There's just too many variables on my end from thinking of it from a customer standpoint. Like, it seems pretty easy, but when you think about the back end stuff, there's just way too much, especially with food quality. I think that's going to be the biggest issue. It's going to be quality of the product. But that's me. I'm mostly a hotel guy, so thinking about the restaurant stuff makes it a little bit different.
What do you think, Michael?
I think we have a model that has and will always be unsustainable because it doesn't make a profit for the shareholders. It doesn't make a profit for the restaurateur. And in most cases, it's very rarely satisfy the consumer because of the back end. That could be ethical behavior around how you employ people. It could be the quality of the delivery, the customer service, the impact on the environment, mopeds have, and so on. There's so many questions. And I think this model is only around for a period. There will always be delivery, but it has to be reinvented. It has to be done. There must be a different way where everybody wins. Right now, there's only one winner, which is right now the delivery company, but the shareholders still not making money. So I've heard on the grapevines that even big shareholders that put a lot of money in VC companies, put money into the delivery company now, starting to shake their hands. So my view is that it will all find its way around. And I think you will see, if I had to look at it myself as an operator, I'll probably look at, can I do this myself? Can I run my own delivery service? Or can I team up with a local guy that has the delivery team? So I know it's a local business and the fees are reasonable. So yeah.
That's a question of the day, right? Is the future of third-party delivery first-party delivery? Shaun, what have you guys seen? You guys are just coming out of winter over there. Did you guys see a transition to first-party delivery?
Not really. We're kind of 12 months sort of behind the US, I think. So US is always going to be the leader in this space in regards to dark kitchens, native delivery, first-party delivery. But it will come. I think 2021 will be really key for that. Here in Melbourne, as we've come out of over 100 days of hard lockdown, with delivery and takeout being the only things that could happen for that period of time. Like, it's been interesting to see brands doing their own delivery rather than using third party, because they just it's just a dirty word. And the fact that those brands haven't been able to own their own data and talk to those customers. So it's been humbling to work with brands directly now for myself, who who technology has the ability for customers, for the vendors to have their own customer data for a change and actually market to them again and have the power and control. I think in the US with delivery consultants like Scott Landers from Figure Eight and stuff like that, and Zool and Reef, I think there's going to be a lot of native first-party delivery, which is going to come through. I think 2021 is going to be the indicator for that in the US, and I think the world will follow. post that, because you guys seems to be in a harder lockdown for sort of, you're in lockdown, then you're not in lockdown, then you're in lockdown, then you're not in lockdown. Like, it's really tricky. So what do venues do? It's a really challenging time. Yeah.
Well, and you look at all the pivots you've seen in the hotel industry. I was reading this article recently, and I'd love to hear from the hotel guys about it. They were talking about how hotels have gone from like sleeping accommodations in the pandemic to public gyms, like pseudo private gyms and co-working spaces, and figuring out all of these different ways to generate revenue. What have you guys seen, and what have you seen that's worked?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting discussion, because what you're talking about with third-party delivery services is exactly what hotels have been dealing with online travel agencies for years, where there's always this dilemma about trying to drive as many direct bookings as you can get, reducing the commissions that you pay to these online travel agencies, but also having the ability to turn on a tap of demand whenever you need to fill in some gaps. So, that still is to play out in the hotel industry. It's far more mature than it is on the restaurant side. But yeah, as we see hotels reinvent how they try to drive revenue, opening up to locals, which is something the hotel industry has been terrible about, not allowing the people that live within a few blocks of a building to come in. Now they have to do that. Now they're almost going out and needing the locals to support the hotel because there's nobody traveling. So we'll see how this plays out.
Well, I want to piggyback off of Adam and Shaun. I think, you're talking about the customer data that, the third-party platforms like Uber Eats or Postmates or Grubhub or whatever, they have access to. And like Adam said, where the hotel side has always been battling with this. And even on the vacation rental side, like Airbnb is very strict on how hosts can communicate with guests, how hosts can actually market themselves. And so that's where a lot of even like property management companies in the vacation rental space are struggling, is because they have a lot of occupancy. They have a great product. They have their own brand, but they struggle to grow their brand because they don't have access. They don't have the ability to really grab that data. And that's where, I think as an industry, if you think about big picture, including service providers, OTAs, big party companies like this that are pretty much data hubs. That's all they are. They provide a service, but they're really data hubs. That's where we all kind of need to come together and realize that if one of these segments struggle, if one does not have guest access, if they are not able to get repeat customer and market to these repeat customers, then and that means that company is going to be out too. They're going to lose a market share. So like you guys all just said, to piggyback off of everything, I think data right now is the biggest thing. It's just trying to get that customer acquisition cost to a low point where we're able to function as an industry.
Let's unpack that, because I think that there's something really important there to this like Trojan horse idea that Uber Eats and OpenTable and Airbnb, they parade as not in a malicious way, but they parade as an infrastructural solution when what they actually are is a marketplace.
Yeah, 100%.
Like a drug. You get addicted to the marketplace. It's not that people go on Airbnb to book your place. It's that they open Airbnb and they say, "What do you have for me today?" Mm-hmm. They're using these platforms to explore options, which intuitively makes sense, in the same way that you would go on OpenTable. And I used to argue with people all the time. I said, OpenTable is a marketplace. It's a marketing platform that offers reservation software, not the other way around. And it creates a real issue for us because it's now a gated community, and you only have access in the same way that Facebook is a gated community, right? Mm-hmm. You can post whatever you want on your page, but your people aren't going to see it unless you pay for them to see it. Mm-hmm. And what is the solution when you find yourself in a position where all of these major corporations have you by the balls?
Can I say one thing to the Airbnb point? Is what we tell our clients all the time, and like even friends and family or other people in the industry that we interview on the podcast. Like they always say my Airbnb, and it's like, no. I think first off, starting like your mindset, shifting to my property on Airbnb is taking back the control is really like the biggest thing that we've been preaching, I think, for a lot of my vacation rental friends and hospitality, you know, expert like you guys, is that we're taking back the control and realizing that a shift in mindset will really determine how this plays out. The more we continue to give that power and thought of my Airbnb, well, it's not Airbnb. Airbnb doesn't clean your toilets. They don't change your sheets. Like, you know, we've had this conversation hundreds of times. I think that's kind of like our biggest, you know, factor is mindset shift and taking back control by realizing that it's a marketplace. It's a marketing platform. It's how you should be. You should be using these channels to fill in your gaps, not be your whole plate. That's my analogy.
There is an interesting thought we need to remember. They did something that every consumer wants. They improved the ease of doing business with them. And that's what we can learn for them as leaders and operators in the industry, because we've been too slow to adapt technology and actually make it part of the way we operate. And we haven't been good enough to adapt technology. But we are at a place now where, as we talked about delivery before, where we can take the control back. You're talking about Will as well. But I think it's very important. The reason why they win is the ease of doing business with them. And I think that's where we need to start thinking as well when we repositioning our new business model into the new era of hospitality.
That's some game changer stuff right there.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, one of the things that hotels deal with marketing from a marketing perspective is the amount of money that they put into, you know, buying placement for their property, whether it's on Google or you know, different ad sets out there that they go after. So there's a chunk of money that goes after that. There's also the issue with, I mean, we're talking about here, the commissions that you pay to some of the OTAs, and, you know, restaurants are dealing with the same thing. And then you've got the OTAs marketing against the hotel, to the destination, right? So if you type in hotels in San Diego, your hotel might come up on page 3 or 4 if you're paying for placement, but I do it right now. Well, after the stream, do it. But, you know, do it right now, and you'll see that the entire page is bought up by OTA listings, right? So they're putting money towards that. So as a hotel, you really need to think about how you're going to spend your money. Are you going to pay your commission and pay to market your hotel online, but then also have the OTAs pay to market against you? So are you throwing good money after bad? And that's where we are in the hotel space. That I can very quickly see us getting to the same place in the restaurants industry with all of the delivery services out there, which I think should probably be thought of as OTAs.
Well, and not talking smack about Open Table, but it was the same basic model, right? They spent a fortune on Google ads to subvert your placement in line, and then in order to gain access to that listing, you then have to pay them to be a part of their ecosystem. Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes back to whether you're talking about restaurants or hotels. So much of this comes down to how you choose to brand and market your location, right? How much is the Ritz-Carlton spending on Facebook ads?
Yeah.
You know, the last restaurant I ate at, you know, prior to the pandemic shutting down was a restaurant called Republic in Los Angeles. And they were packed. It was like a Wednesday and they were packed. And they don't market, you know, they're not buying Facebook ads and all of that. They must have made strategic choices in the same way that the Ritz-Carlton made strategic choices. They gave them the positioning publicly that they have. Can you guys think of like great decisions that you've seen people make that could help restaurateurs and hoteliers looking to differentiate themselves in the market?
That's a good question. I think just being open to different things. I think just to dovetail on what you just said, Josh, like what we've learned in this pandemic, which I think we all knew before, which has highlighted it now and accelerated, is the fact that brand is the most important thing. And the fact that owning that customer experience, whether it be in hotels or restaurants, is critical to the success of a venue, not how much you cookie them around on a website to try and get them to buy a product. So, you know, how you make people feel is the indicator of if you're going to have a successful business. I think in regards to brands, sort of watching this and listening to this conversation, like they have to be open to changing things often. And that means they have to have a really good team in place, which are really agile. And it just means as a leader, you have to be incredibly honest with your team that shit is real right now. we're going to have to pivot and change. So sometimes we're going to be, premium fast casual. Sometimes we'll have to do some QSR sort of elements and delivery and takeout for a period of time. I'm not sort of sure where it is, but we're going to have to change, and I need you to be, I need you to be vulnerable. I need you to be movable and manageable during this time, because that's the critical thing, because it's going to come down to brand, and it's going to come down to the people within that brand, whether that be the customers who are actually being serviced, or most importantly, the staff who are creating that experience. So the flexibility is key right now. Absolutely key.
And you're going to win them one customer at a time, right? You have to. It's as laborious and tedious as that may seem. You really are. You have to find a way to create connections all the way through the service chain, right? From booking all the way to departure, and you're really holding people's hands, and that has to be part of your framework.
I think what you just said, Josh, it's like you said something. How do you position yourself? How strategic do you position yourself? Is there some brands that's winning right now? There is, yes, there is brands winning, and there's also brands losing. And I think it comes back to that you have to keep in your mind a brand is a single word, idea or concept or belief that you own in the mind of your customer or prospect, whatever you call it. And it's as simple as that, and as complex as that. And if you know, as you said, Shaun, you know what you sell to whom and what emotional platform, how do you make people feel? You actually have a shared chance to win here, but you have to be very careful that you don't forget to be very focused and differentiated and understand the value proposition you're giving. Because if then you're not understanding that, you're then a commodity. And what is it that commodity do? They compete on price. And then you start what I call the death spiral, from good to great. You can't win on price. Very few companies can win on price. There's a few, Amazon, but is that a sustainable model for all companies? No, it's not. It is for Amazon. So again, how do you take your business or your restaurant from a community commodity place to actually become a bit like Southwest Airlines? There's a religion. So how do you go on that journey, and how do you position yourself, or your restaurant concept, or your hotel concept, whatever you have? And I think that's very important as an operator to start asking you these very difficult questions. Who am I? Why I'm here? Why do I add value in the minds of my customers? And what makes them raving fans in principle?
Yeah. Exactly. And you bring up a great point, which is they need to be raving fans. I just read this article. I'm sure you guys have heard about it or read a similar article. It was talking about the chief marketing officer at Taco Bell, the guy that created the Yo Quiero Taco Bell with the little Chihuahua thing, and how from a publicity standpoint, it was the most successful campaign potentially in the history of fast food in terms of raising awareness for Taco Bell, what they do, and all of that. The guy was fired, I think, 2 quarters later, 6 months later. And the reason being, it didn't translate into sales. It didn't inspire people. They actually lost a 6% market share over the course of that 6 months. And it's because even though people saw it and they laughed, they didn't want to eat tacos after they saw it. And so awareness for the sake of awareness and marketing for the sake of awareness really doesn't work unless you achieve conversion. And it brings me to my next point, and I know we've all seen it, the Burger King ad, where they're advocating for guests to eat at all of the other fast food chains. What did you think about that, and how do you think it's going to work out for Burger King?
I think it's going to, as an old McDonald's guy, I was absolutely shocked to see that, because that was probably, if you think tactically, very clever move. I actually think it came from the heart of them, that they actually, because the UK CEO of Burger King has been actually out with a banner for the industry quite aggressively, and actually pushing the politicians to help the industry. So I think they did the right thing there by actually saying that we are here as well, part of the industry. So they actually maybe stepped into the industry again, where maybe many have seen these big guys outside the industry. But I think it's quite clever, and they told a story about they care. And suddenly there were storytellers instead of marketeers, which I think are the winners of the future. And I think your previous guest, Seth Godin, says something similar at some point, that people that can tell stories are the winner of tomorrow or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think of a conversation us five have all the time. And it doesn't really have to deal with Burger King, so to say, but we talk about our podcast and like building, like asking what works. Like we're like, what works for our audience? Like, why does our audience continue to grow and continue to stay at this point? Well, we've realized a couple things. Consistency is key. When we post and we do consistent things with our brand and our audio and whatever, like that works. And then, of course, what have we always said since day one, since you like started Full Comp and since you did Proven Principles, like, is that good content always does good. With the content's good, it's going to perform. Mm-hmm. You're going to see it. And I think we're getting back to like a couple of points you guys all made a little bit earlier was, that restaurant that was packed on a Wednesday. Well, they're not doing any marketing. Guess what? We barely do any marketing other than sharing on our pages. But when the content's good, or when the food's good, or when the hotel's really that good and the customer service is great, it's a natural effect. And I think when we focus on consistency and then, of course, being just like good quality control, and then always learning, like Shaun pointed out, like we're always like, some days you're gonna have to be a fast food, takeout, dine in, whatever, or some other days you're gonna have to pivot to this. Like we're always learning something from each other on these calls or these like live streams or whatever, because when you're consistent, great content, but then you try out new things and you're not afraid to see what works, I think that is a good combination of what a lot of businesses can apply. And then, of course, like Michael even said too, just the understanding of these platforms, OpenTable, Airbnb, etc., learned how to create a great marketing experience, but also like booking experience, whether it's a restaurant or Airbnb, vacation rental, hotel. So I think there's a big combination of everything that we talk about on a weekly basis every Monday when we have our chat. So it's just like throwing it all into a pot and seeing it all work.
That's interesting. I'm curious to get your take on this though, because I'm wondering, I've been thinking about this lately. Does brand get in the way of being able to pivot to do the things that need to get done to survive what we're going through right now? A long-winded question in saying, like, how many times have you worked at an organization where they say, well, we don't do that. We're the XXX brand, whatever it is. That's not how we do things. And that mindset, that doesn't just go away when times get tough, right? Some people double down and they say, no, we need to stick to what we do because we know that it's worked in the past and we just need to steer the ship and stay going in the same direction. And it seems to me that, or quit. Yeah. And it seems to me that the companies that are able to shed that way of thinking are the ones that are probably better positioned than others to come out of this.
Yeah. I mean, I owned and operated a Michelin rated fine dining restaurant in the middle of downtown LA. We specialized at, the month that we shut down was the month we were supposed to go zero carbon, only sourced from small farmers, did everything right, farm to table. Everything about the kitchen and the bar program were scratch, zero waste bar program. And because of that, everything was really expensive. My rent was also $21,000 a month. So the food wasn't expensive because of that. It was going to be expensive because of that. And I looked at the market and I said, what this community needs is a low priced food option that can be delivered a variety of ways. And it's gonna require really pliable leadership. That's not me. And so, that isn't on brand for me. I don't know how to serve it cheap. I don't know how to serve it fast, and I don't know how to help it keep. I mean, most of what we did was fried food. So like, I don't know how to make that keep long term. And in that same interview with Seth Godin, one of the first things I had him bring up was strategic quitting. And saying, this is not on brand for me. And so, my brand is based in my core values. And so I don't want to deviate from what I've dedicated my life to. So, I mean, that is that third option that, I guess some people choose to take. And I certainly did.
I guess that
there's nothing wrong with that.
No, exactly right.
Worked for me.
Yeah.
I was going to say, going back to that Burger King thing, like we don't have Burger King here. We call it Hungry Jack's in Australia. But it's pretty much the same. I was just a bit floored by it, and I'll probably hold my judgment on BKs until, like, what are they going to do next? Like, are they showing empathy now for the fast food, area, and they really care about the whole industry? Like, that's not a conversation I would have expected from them. So, like, what are they going to do next? So I think it could be a bit of a line in the sand moment, as I'm sure a lot of brands, sort of circling back to what everyone said, a lot of brands are sort of thinking right now, well, what do I stand for? What do I need to move forward and actually make my business successful? I think, maybe Burger King are doing that. Like, they're thinking, okay, we're showing empathy, and we're showing that we care about the industry as a whole, and we want you to shop everywhere because it benefits all of us and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it's just a new movement where we're seeing that, across the hospitality industry, where connections are being formed with hoteliers and restaurateurs that weren't before. And now we've all of a sudden, I think, got a stronger network of people across the board, which is a humbling and exciting thing to see. I think the question is, like, how many of us, can hold, how many of those venues and hotels can hold on. I hope a lot, but time will tell.
But you touched on something that I would love to pose to the group, which is, I do believe that there's a gold rush coming. Think about all of the restaurants and all of the hotels that have closed, right? When the world gets back to work, you've got, at least in the restaurant industry, you're looking at 40% of the supply to meet 100, maybe 100+% of the demand. And I don't think these people are going to come out and say, man, I've been locked up in my house for 4 months. I really want a Whopper. The spoils will seriously. The spoils will go to the independent restaurateurs. The spoils will go to the independent hoteliers. And so is Burger King trying to create some level of authenticity so that they can play when the world gets back to work?
I think that if I was, I think it's also maybe they realized that we can't just be big and alone. Maybe they are more hurt than we think, because I think the bigs are more hurt than we think. We saw today they are not in the fast food category. It's called Leon. It's healthy fast food here in the UK. Went into a CVA process. So these are the ones that have done well in the pandemic, are now throwing in the towel. They have about 70 restaurants across Europe. I think they have a couple in the US now as well. But it's interesting when the big guys are starting to hit the ground and see what they do. Leon has been amazing all the way through, but I think that's an element of it as well, that, we, in the future, will not be able to stand alone. We need to be part of that connected market Shaun just talked about. So I think that's the case. And to what Adam said, that there's these people that is, I think it's very interesting. You see that all the time. Every time a change hit, there's always somebody that holds the playbook and the rule book and say, we can't do it differently. And I think that, it's just the lack of entrepreneurial spirit they have in their organization, because that must be the skill that's needed now. If all the opportunity is coming, as you say, Josh, it's entrepreneurial skills and ability to take something from nothing to something incredible very quickly, and actually just, invent and do things on the go. So I think you will. I agree with you, Josh. There's a massive opportunity, but definitely need to find the entrepreneurial mindset and spirit, and also in large organization to grab that opportunity, or else you're just going to go into death spiral.
Yeah,
and
I think
this year.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about this entire point is that if you just go a level behind what Burger King put out there, really, they're a collection of franchisees, right? And so there's standalone independent owners that have the store that pay to have the brand, and then they get all of the, everything about having a Burger King franchise. Somebody who's an independent restaurant has a lot more freedom to make the changes to their offering and how they engage their customer than a franchisee of Burger King. Because Burger King is going to say, no, you're like, I don't care if everybody wants what's on a Whopper. I don't know. If I don't care if everybody wants lettuce on a Whopper, like, you can't do that, because that's not how you make a Whopper, right? So, whatever's on a Whopper. but it's an interesting point, just kind of supporting Josh, what you're saying, that the independent restaurant, it probably is going to come out of this faster than some of these brands, because to the point earlier that, brands sometimes gets in the way of being able to pivot, make the changes that need to happen.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and then I'll let you. Well, because of what I've seen, locally, with a lot of local restaurants in Brighton, primarily driven by local restaurants. It's like people on social media are like praying for them for open again, the ones that can open, and they are like every time they post something, if you took a brand, the brands will be so jealous of them compared to their impact as an independent, the rate of response they get on it and the conversation people get. And there's some of these in the independent, if they understand what I talked about before, brand as a religion, and start to build the business around their story, their uniqueness, why they're here, why they open the restaurant, what they're doing to survive, I'm sure they will take a very big part of the gold rush without doing anything else, and just getting in front of the camera and the mic and the social media and start talking about these stories, because that's the emotional platform you talked about, Shaun, as well. They'll buy into it. So therefore, I believe, yes, they will, but they have to do that little bit of work of knocking on the door and say, we're still here.
100%. I love what a guest of mine said earlier, like last month, is more regarding to hotels, but this guy's like a total futurist, real smart, just really like future thinking dude. But he makes a good point, and I'm pretty sure all of us can relate to this because we've all said this before in some way or form, is that he said, it's sad that we have to innovate when we're forced to innovate. And so the mindset of, well, we've done this for 20 years, why would we change now? That mindset, we've seen a lot of people or a lot of companies during this time back in March and April that had that mindset, well, I'm not going to change how I operate or what I'm going to do for my customer because this is how we've done it. Well, a lot of them aren't here. Let's be honest. Like a lot of them are closed, at least from what I've seen in the hotels and vacation rentals. So it's like those who changed and was like, yeah, we've done this for 20 years, but I don't want to, say I had a good run. I want to continue another 20. And they are the ones that really did a fast forward. And I said this to a couple other guests too, is that COVID really sped up the way the industry was going. What was going to happen in 2 or 3 years really happened in 6-7 months. And so to be on a positive spectrum, like vacation rentals, that are banned in some cities like New York are actually getting hotel licenses, to operate. And now they're the only vacation rental place that's actually allowed to have guests, and they're killing it. So it's like, there's stuff like that, that it could be the smallest pivot, but I think the mindset of, well, we've done this for 20 years is no longer an excuse anymore. And that's what hopefully from people in our group, the GameChangers, we'll see that what can we look at and evaluate to be, we've done this for this long. Is it actually working? Is it sustainable? Is it profitable? Is it actually what our customers want? And if not, then what can we do to make it? If so, then how can we continue to be consistent? So that's just kind of my thoughts.
Do you guys think, like, we're all talking about leadership in some way, shape, or form, right? Like, do you think that leadership is going to be changed and evolve during this particular time? Like, I was on a leadership podcast last week. I got asked to be a guest, like, shout out to Eric, and it's something I never would have normally done, is like one, being a guest on a podcast talking just about leadership and not about hospitality. But like, it was super interesting to think about my career in leadership, like leading people since I was about 19, and then thinking about how, I'm, leading, in a different way now. Like, do you guys think from your conversation with who you're talking to, either on your podcasts or as clients or whatnot, that you feel that leadership is sort of evolving and changing during this time?
I think it's becoming more transparent. There's been a lot of false leaders in the industry, whether it's hotels, vacation rentals, restaurants, in the world. Let's just be honest. I think I think we're able to see the bullshit more. I think we're able to see through that, and I think the real leaders that don't stick with the bullshit and kind of cut that out. Their leadership styles that are, not normal, than, like what all the other BS leaders or whatever are trying to do. I think that's kind of been something I've seen just recently, is like some people I used to look up as leaders. And now during the pandemic, when it all came to, no revenue and no audience paying attention to this and no that, like they showed their true colors. Like that was a big shock. And so I think, being able to see through that now is kind of like, just from my own perspective, I don't really know how it's changing leadership, but I just know that I think we're seeing the realness of what people that have been in leadership roles really is.
Oh, I don't think 100%. I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Josh. You go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, from my perspective, the pivot isn't from one style of leadership to another. The pivot is from management to leadership, right? It's the difference between trying to control the behavior of another human being to inspiring someone to behave in a specific way. And when you do that, everything changes. And that's really what you're seeing. The concepts that are thriving are being led. I think back to a conversation I had with my GM, I guess more than a year ago now. And I said, you're doing a great job managing the team. I really want to work with you on becoming a great leader. And he goes, well, I am a great leader. And I was like, well, what makes you say that? And he goes, well, everybody loves me. I was like, well, I love you too. But the real question when it comes to effective leadership is, where are you leading them?
Yeah.
What is the destination that you have in mind? What is this leadership evolution look like for you? Where do you want this team to land? How do you want to see them improve? What impact does that have on the business versus just making sure people show up on time? And the places that you see, whether they're hotels or restaurants, thriving, or the concepts that are being led into a new world.
Adam, you were about to say something, and maybe we're thinking the same.
We might have been. Well, all I was going to say is that typically, we hear a lot about empathetic leadership and servant leadership. These are things that have been thrown around. Terms have been thrown around for a long time. I think one of the big differences, at least in the hospitality industry right now, is that before, the people that you were leading, yes, you had to get them to a destination. You had business goals, you had brand goals, you were trying to achieve something, expansion, whatever it was. But you also, they had their career goals. They had, other things that they wanted to achieve within the organization. Now people are like legitimately scared about being able to put food on the table. And, not to talk about all the lack of stimulus and the help for workers that have been affected by this. That's probably a whole other stream. But now you're talking about providing, in some cases, as much as a job should do this, safety and security for people. You need to be so upfront about what's going on in the business and how they fit in, and give them as much visibility as you can about how they might be affected, so they can plan to be able to take care of themselves and their families. And that wasn't something that had a lot of attention put on it in years past. I think, some of the successful leaders are doing that these days.
That's a good point.
I don't think the leadership skills have changed. I think Josh, you touched on it. It's like set the direction, get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and then set the culture that you need and want for your business. And I think it's going to be more evident, and I think that this was already coming. We're moving from this very industrial way of managing, not only in hospitality in general, towards some kind of new paradigm that's been called a lot of different things. They've been called teal environments, they've been called agile environments, but actually to a more self-managed situation where all this middle management, as you said, Josh, these managers that just manage will disappear because you put the power in the front line. It's not something you do in one day, but the companies, as we talked about, that has a brand as religion or very deep purpose, where it's not only in there for the profit, but they're in there for make good for their people, the communities they're part of, and the planet, will be able to create these standards that people much easier can self-adjust, and thereby you have shown leadership. Actually, the best leaders I met and the best leaders I've met through the podcast over the years have almost always been a bit like underplayed, not very charismatic, and they have just been working their guts off to set such a high standard for their team. And there's a book called Good to Great, describes them in exactly the same way. They call level 5 leadership, and I think that's the kind of leaders we need more of. And then, of course, the one that wants to give permission to operate, because we found out in this world we live in now, we don't need all these leaders to tell us what to do. We can actually figure it out ourselves.
Takes a high level of self-awareness to be able to do that, though, doesn't it? It takes the guy, Josh, like your GM, who said, "I'm already a great leader." Like, how much self-awareness was he deploying when he made that comment? Right? Just because everybody loves me. And no, I'm not talking disparagingly, but I think you get the point. Yeah,
I agree with you.
Yeah. So, that level 5 leadership. We've got to have mentors in the game that can help people get there. And I think it's super powerful. Michael, I think you're spot on.
100%.
Well, I also think there's so much to learn from other businesses, right? And other industries and other business models. And, this is an industry, and I am as at fault as the next owner operator, and that I've done a lot of navel gazing in my life. Look at the way I run my business. Look at the way my neighbors run their business. When I wanted advice, I went to other chefs. I didn't really look outside the industry for best practices, influence, because I was raised in a culture where I believed that the restaurant industry itself was a unicorn. We operated in a different way, hospitality in general. People operate in a really different way, and the rules of traditional business don't apply to us. And as it turns out, and I think the pandemic really highlighted this, it's not true. You can run your business like a business.
Yeah.
And with that being said, I wanted to round out by everyone going around and mentioning one of their favorite books, like business-related books, and why they love it.
Ooh.
Yeah, who starts?
Well, Michael already said good to great.
But that doesn't take your turn, Michael. Michael, if you want to list another book, you can list another book.
I have another book as well. I don't know.
Shoot. You guys read that often?
Yeah.
Have a good to great, and then I will say, right now, one of my favorite books, I actually think many founders and leaders of any organization should actually read, is by Gino Wickman, because I actually read that again because I was in a situation myself where I had to understand if I was the visionary or the integrator. And it's called Rocket Fuel. And so many get this wrong. They think they have to do the whole journey themselves, but don't get a partner with them in the top. So either if you don't have the visionary skills, get a visionary on board. If you don't have the integrate or implement the skill, get the implement on board. I think that will definitely help you on the journey going forward. I think it's a super relevant book right now. One of my favorite top 3 books to read. I just reread it again.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Before I forget. I'd say, obviously, from a hospitality standpoint, Set the Table by Danny Meyer is like, it's like the Bible, right? Like just
right.
pure amazing mentor leader in our industry. Just the way that he interacts with the industry and for the industry is just inspirational. And I think like Tim Ferriss writes a lot of really good books. I think like Tribe of Mentors is a really good book. So those are probably my 2.
Dude, you literally just stole my book recommendation. I was gonna grab it. It's right there. Tribe of Mentors is right there. I'll second for Tribe of Mentors.
The other one I was going to say was Who Stole My Cheese, but maybe I just did that to you.
You can have 7 habits of highly effective people, Adam.
There you go. I'll take 7 habits. Yeah, begin with the end in mind. 7 habits. Fantastic book, foundational to everything with my career. It was required reading with Fairmont many years ago, and then they moved to Good to Great. But those 2 books in particular have stuck with me for years. Highly, highly recommended.
Have you guys read The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek?
Yeah.
No.
So appropriate for this moment. The book is principally about the value of long-term thinking. And you look at, guys like Walt Disney, they were able to create these huge empires because they didn't really focus on the day-to-day as much as they focused on the long-term vision and how they wanted to get there. They also saw that, the obstacle is simply part of the path. But when you look at your life and your business being disrupted like it is in this moment, you can either say that everything is on pause until this is done, or you can say that this is part of the journey and this is part of the path. And the book goes a really long way to kind of informing that perspective and giving you actionable advice on how you can use this as an opportunity to improve, regardless of what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So
Damn.
that is definitely mine. Will Slicker.
Well, I'm going to add all those books to my list because I obviously don't read enough. But I will say a book that has stuck with me, and maybe it's not 100% business, but a little bit of personal development and business. Crushing It by Gary Vee. As much as I hate always quoting him, I think there's a lot of good concepts and like fundamentals that just get brought up. And the first book, Crush It, I read. And that was more of like getting started, but now like being in the phase of like I've been fully self-employed for a year almost, knock on wood. That is like crushing it now. Like now that you've gotten started, it's been a really big key player on just kind of like something I can go back to, just and look back and look at points and see what's applicable, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and all that good stuff. So it's been a fun one.
Cool.
Right on. Well, boys, we will adjourn until next Monday. It was an absolute pleasure.
This was great.
This was great.
Yeah, it was good.
Everyone enjoyed it.
Good
The
job.
one person that's currently watching on Facebook right now, tell your friends, have your friends tell their friends, and let's get this party started.
All right, guys. Awesome. Thanks very much.
Game changing.
Bye, guys.
Talk to you soon.